story is I played baseball at Indiana University and had a pretty good career there. And, we kind of knew that I was going to get drafted, but didn't know by who or when or what round. And, it was interesting. We're driving down with my old baseball coach to play in a summer league game right after the draft in Peoria. And we're listening to Harry Carey call the game on radio. And Harry goes, "Holy cow, what's wrong with this world? The Southsiders just drafted a kid from Wilmette, and he's a Northsider. What the heck is going on here?" And of course, we were all stunned. And he mentioned my name and about drove off the road. And that's how I found out I got drafted, and connected with the White Sox and negotiated for a couple of weeks, and ended up signing and signed. This was interesting. They said, "What do you want?" And back then they weren't giving us triple figure bonuses. I said, "I want you to pay for my last year of school, and I want you to get me a car." And so they totaled that up, and it turned out to be $12,500. And I said, "Done deal." And I got my car, and they paid for my last year at Indiana. And off we go to Knoxville. And they said, "Well, if you mind your P's and Q's and you do well, you're probably going to replace Bill Melton." And I quickly proved that to be a fallacy. And turned out I could play pretty good baseball in double and triple A, but once you get past that level, the competition, it looks easy when you're watching it on TV, but these guys are so zoned in. Once they get to that level, it's just mind-boggling the level of talent that they've got. I got to play with a lot of interesting guys, a lot of Hall of Famers, Lamar Hoyt, Britt Burns, Dick Dotson. Played with Tony La Russa in '74, and actually got to play for him in '78 in Knoxville. What a great guy. First of all, he's a lawyer. He's got a law degree, and you could tell. He's just sharp as a tack. But he's one of those guys that, whether you had a good game or a bad game or an indifferent game or didn't even play, he would always grab every guy on the team and find something good to say about what you were doing. And, it made you want to come to the park and bust your ass for the guy. And, I'll never forget him. He was just a great guy to be associated with. But, I bounced around between double and triple A, and, spent a little time in '78 in Puebla, Mexico. They couldn't figure out what to do with me. They were hoping that I was going to figure it out, and they didn't want to just flat out get rid of me. So, they optioned me out to Mexico in '78. That was quite an experience. A little precursor to Panama. And then in spring training, got a meeting with one of the coaches in '79, and they said, "We just don't think this is going to work out, and we've got some young players that we're, going to put ahead of you." And this one guy said, "Well, we heard that there's a league that's coming into fruition in Panama." And I said, "Panama, Florida, yeah, that's great. Never been there. Looking forward to it." He said, No, Panama in Panama City." And I thought, well, okay, what are my options? And they said, "You don't have any. That's your option." I looked into it, talked to the folks down there. The money was terrific. Was all tax-free, paid for all our room and board, played in some just unbelievable cities. And, they had this contract that they set up with it's called the Inter-American League. And there were teams in San Juan, Santo Domingo. The only city in the United States was Miami, the Miami Amigos, Maracaibo, Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela, and then Panama City. And that's where it started. Well, first and foremost, we had no idea what to expect. You know, there were players from all over the country, our country, your country, everybody's country. I mean, we had, I think we had Adolfo Phillips, and this is a funny story. Adolfo was our center fielder. And I recall Adolfo Phillips from being an up and coming rock star with the Chicago Cubs. In fact, I remember very clearly the day that he hit 3 home runs in the first game of a doubleheader. And he was just a character, but he was our center fielder, and he was from Panama, and he was kind of our guide, our tour guide to begin with. It was exciting. I mean, I'd never forget coming into town. We were housed at the Hotel Grand Saloy, which was the luxury hotel in Panama at the time. They had a rooftop swimming pool, a bar up there, casino on the main floor. Rooms were gorgeous. And I'll never forget the first time coming in from the airport. We got to see ships coming on street level in the canal. And I'd never seen anything like it. None of us has ever seen anything like that. I mean, it was the most spectacular sight I've ever seen. And, you know, from there, it was just one thing after another. I mean, it was just an amazing place. From what I was told, these sailors would come in on these ships from all over the world, and some of them would say, I'm just going to stay here. And they'd set up shop on one block or another block. And, you know, you'd have one area that was predominantly English people. Next area block was Norwegians. Another block was Germans. And you had the Puerto Ricans. And I'll tell you that the biggest thing I remember is the diversity of cultures, but the food was unbelievable. I mean, you'd look at some of these shops and you're like, I'm not going to eat in there. But then once we figured out that like these people cook like they cooked at home for their families, and you could go from having, you know, a fabulous Chinese food meal on one corner, and then across the street you're even having brats and beer in the German area. And I mean, the cultural diversity was just incredible. Never seen anything like it, probably will never see it again. Well, you know, the league was, I mean, on paper, everything looked just fantastic. I mean, they had a multi-million dollar contract to broadcast the games all over Latin America. And, you know, it was funded by some bankers. I mean, the guy that owned our team, Bob Maduro, was a very well off bank and respected banker in Panama. All the other teams were owned by people that were very, very wealthy. And, you know, this contract was just unbelievable. I mean, they were streaming the games all over Latin America and the United States. But what they didn't figure is at this time of year, it religiously rained at 4 o'clock every afternoon. And that in itself presented a huge problem because the rain hit about 4 o'clock when we were all preparing to take batting practice, and none of the teams really had any game plan for taking care of like rolling out tarps or, I mean, and I think, you know, of the 35 games that we could have played while I was down there, I think we only completed 10. And it was just, I mean, it was a mind-boggling experience. I mean, the rain would come, and you know how it rains down there. You know, the rain comes, and it's like 3 inches of rain, and it washes, you know, small children and cars and everything down the streets. And you know, guess what it did to the baseball field? That was really the downfall, along with the extensive expenses that they incurred with putting us. Can you imagine putting up a bunch of minor league baseball players in a luxury hotel with the okay to go ahead and sign over all of your meals, food and beverage, gambling, everything? I mean, that was all covered in our contracts. And we flew first class. We, you know, they flew us, the travel in itself. I mean, we had to fly everywhere. We flew to Maracaibo, we flew to Caracas, we flew to Santo Domingo, we flew to San Juan, Puerto Rico, we flew to Miami, and we're staying in these gorgeous hotels. And, you know, we didn't think anything of it, but then, you know, as it started coming to a head, you know, we're all going, how are they affording all this? especially since we weren't playing hardly any games. That led to, basically the demise of the league. And it wasn't attendance. I mean, the fans were just incredible. I mean, we would have people out there. I mean, baseball is a religion in Latin America, and it showed. I mean, we remember playing in, I think it was Maracaibo, and Louis Aparicio was the coach there. And, they were putting 30,000 people in the stands. But then when it rains and you can't play, it doesn't matter. I mean, so yeah, eventually that led to the impending demise of the league. Well, we weren't really sure what was going on. I mean, we had a couple of cancellations, and slowly but surely the teams started folding. And I forget which ones were first. I think Maracaibo might have gone first, and then 2 days later the team in San Juan folded, and for long I think it was us and Miami and one other team that were in the league, and we could kind of see that this wasn't going to go very much further. And sure enough, we got a notification that the league had folded, and we were stuck in the hotel. Nobody had any money, which was very interesting. We were faced with the challenge of trying to get ourselves home, and of course, so we had a fair amount of rioting going on. And we would sit up, have our Mai Tais on the top of the roof of the Grand Saloy. And, in Latin America, things like this are handled a little differently than they are. And the police are not giving people pats on the back and, asking them nicely to go home. I mean, they had sandbag machine gun emplacements on virtually every corner outside of our hotel. Evidently, the owner had some connections and, didn't want any problems. But I mean, we would stand and watch the demonstrators, swarm in around the hotel, and they'd throw the tear gas and they'd swarm out. The tear gas would blow away and they'd swarm back again like a colony of bees. And we started to get a little worried. We weren't sure. None of us had any plane tickets. None of us had any money. And we were a little concerned about how we were going to get out. Then the issue became the manager of the hotel, who had all of these ball players there living on somebody else's credit account. Who's going to pay for this? I probably shouldn't say this in public, but I mean, we had to quietly sneak out. One of our players was from Miami, and he wired his father to get enough money to get cab ride for the five of us that were left. And we kind of snuck out and got to the airport. That in and of itself was a bit of a challenge because we didn't have any money to pay the airport fee. And so we're standing in line and we're all scratching our heads thinking, because it was, I think, $10. I mean, it wasn't much, but none of us had it. And we ran into this very nice gentleman who was working for a telecom company laying cable in the water outside of Panama. And he had evidently been through something like this and heard us, complaining about where we're going to, what's going to happen. And he loaned us the $10 to pay the airport fee to get out. I suspect that there's probably pictures of me on the post office there saying, wanted, along with my four other friends. But it was quite an experience. I remember when, at the beginning of the season, before the regular season started, we took a bus ride to, is it Cologne? We played an exhibition game up there, and the road goes right along the canal, and just as we're driving in our bus, seeing these boats, I mean, it was just fascinating. And the people, I mean, one of the things that I found, since I lived there is that when you're living in an area with mixed cultures, I mean, it's just a more chill environment. People are more understanding, and they don't care what you look like, or, because you can imagine us baseball players with long hair and wandering around, we kind of stood out, but never did we feel like there was any problem or any danger, or, I mean, it was, and the experiences were just, I had my first monkey meet down there. The kids, outside the ballpark, the vendors, the kids would go out with their 22s in the morning, and they would rifle off a few monkeys, and then, come back and grill them up, and they'd serve them on a stick. And I remember the first bite that I had, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like steak or something. And I take a bite, and it's a little tough. And I said, what is this? Oh, it's mono. It's mono. And I said, oh, mono. Is that kind of like Wagyu beef or something? And it's, no, monkey. True story. Yeah, it's like there's a world out there that is just terrific and livable with great people. And, I mean, Panama is the epitome of that. I mean, unless you've been to somewhere like Panama, I mean, we're those of us that, now I've been lucky, I've traveled all over the world, but, I mean, those people that stay in their neighborhoods, or, go to Colorado for vacation instead of exploring somewhere like this, uh, have no idea what they're encountering when they go down there. I mean, it's just a very unique, friendly, relaxing place. If you believed everything you heard about, oh, yeah, the riots in third world and blah, 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 I mean, you'd never go down there. But I mean, once you see it, once you feel it, and it's the people. I mean, you can find a beach anywhere. It's the people that live down there that have adopted this as their home, that don't look at us and go, oh, there's another American. Panama's, it was not like Mexico. I had enough of Mexico with, I mean, all the tourist places, and it's almost like, and of course the Mexicans down there, when we were there, they blame the American tourists. They come down and, they treat us like dirt and blah, blah, blah. Well, there was none of that in Panama. I mean, you didn't see that. You didn't have that prejudgment. You didn't have pickpockets running around, or, like in Mexico. I'll never forget, I get into Mexico City, and I get off the bus with my bags, and I lay them down and make a phone call, and some guy comes over and says, I want to help you with your bags. And, I didn't know. He helped me with my bags. He's 2 blocks away. And he was helping himself to my bags. And you never saw any of that in Panama. I mean, everybody was, it was just like family members.